course.
Microphones are on.
Of course, we judge our
Call the meeting to order.
we judge our acting mayor based on the length of the meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have received one other business item in advance of the meeting. It was raised by Councillor Marsden and pertains to fire department charges and insurance cost recovery.
Okay. Nita?
And I have a request for an OB item, park encroachments along Coquitlam Crunch.
Any other OB items? Okay.
The first item on the agenda is the minutes of the Council Committee meeting held on Monday, June 27th. The recommendation is to approve.
Move. Second.
Moved by Councillor Hodge, second by Councillor Asmussen. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 2 is a delegation. I would like to invite Mr. Agustin Bonilla and Mrs. Carolina Bonilla to please come forward. They will be speaking to concerns regarding property damage from their neighbor's tree.
Benito Bonilla.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry I never been a meeting like that, and I never thought I had to be stressed too. But I'm here to a little bit. It's not a little bit situation; it's a big situation. My name is Agustin Bonilla, and my wife is right here.
Sit here.
Right on time. Situation is I moved there 1105 Thomas Avenue in Coquitlam, 2001. Since the moment I moved there, I have 7 neighbors all the way around my property. In the backyard is the one who has a big tree, which I put a tool place under the tree that time, but the tree was very short. Wasn't that big. Now I've been replacing roof for twice since, and I'm ready to replace it again. A lot of damage on that tree, and also I've been here already, and I believe Mayor Stewart being at home a long time ago too, about the same situation. That's probably you don't remember. That was a few years ago. And Jim Bontempo been there too. The survey, everybody trying to speak with that lady, and the lady they don't recognize nothing, zero. She said I've been paying everybody to be on my favor against her, and I have every single thing legal all the way around my property, survey and everything. But the damage that tree is causing not only me and the next neighbors around, which you already have, they already signed from the Tyrian tree, the other side of Thomas and Marmont, and she said that tree is heritage, which the city already have a copy from the city here. There is no heritage tree in around Coquitlam. The tree is so high, only hair can trim it. And I would like to find a way you to help me to tell her to prune the tree. Simple, and the damage is gonna be disappear, I believe.
Okay. Are you done speaking?
I do have a picture. You already have a picture over there.
We have.
The kind of tree and how the tree has damaged my property, even though I have a fruit trees around there which is damaged already, a couple plum tree which was beautiful, producing already the fruit. And one day her swimming pool broke down and ran all the way across, almost across to my basement, which is far away. It's more than 130 feet away. And she said she never was agree about the swimming pool broke down. But I lucky at that moment her husband came and apologized and said, sorry, I can't assist her. I could. She called me the swimming pool call. See, that's what the answer later. He accept, she never accept nothing. And the water kills our trees, fruit trees. But I think I'm here just to simple, to make a letter, make her to prune the tree, and I think everything is gonna fix it up. For now, I'm not trying to make a big deal, because it's a huge deal, but I don't want to proceed no more unless she is still going. Because I do have video, every single proof, which right now we don't have it here because we are only for the tree. Simple.
Okay, well, thank you. There's a couple of questions from council members. First, Councillor O'Neill.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Bonilla.
I'm sorry, she wants to say anything.
Yeah, one of the main points that we are here also is that, like he said, that we've been here and everywhere looking for something form, a letter or some document that says that he is right to trim the tree. He was told that he have the right to trim the tree, but the lady is so difficult. For 15 years, it's been so difficult, especially with him and mouthing and okay a lot. So, in the letter that we're looking for the letter or some document that says that he have the right to trim the tree and to be safe, because the lady is so difficult. If he trim the tree and something else can happen, he accused him of killing the dog, a dog that it died in her backyard. So he accused him. Lucky he was not there. I was the one that was there with some neighbors in my backyard. Otherwise, she sent the police also. But so many things. But the main point is that we want that document. And we looked in everybody in this office and here, and nobody could find any written document that says he have the right to trim the tree. And we find out that it was only by mouthing. So it doesn't protect him to trim the tree.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, and that is the crucial issue, I think, about whether or not you have the right to trim the part of the tree that comes over your property. And I'm not a lawyer, but I do believe everything I've heard and learned over the last many years in this regard is that, yes, you do have the right. The city doesn't get involved in disputes between private property owners on issues that involve just directly them and not a city bylaw or anything like that. So we can't give out free legal advice. We can give political advice, the council anyway, but not legal advice. We can't do that. We can't issue something that's really a matter of civil law, common law, I think. But you'd have to, this is just advice from me, because you've come to council looking for something. I'm pretty sure we cannot give you a document saying that you have the right to do that. If you want some assurance, you should probably go to a lawyer and just get some advice from a lawyer saying, yes, and it's under these particular former cases where it's been adjudicated. A lawyer could look up the cases for you, photocopy them, and then you could have those with you. I mean, I don't know if you're in the right or the wrong in terms of your long-standing dispute with your neighbor, but I'm just giving you the benefit of my knowledge about the rights you have as a private property owner. You can as far as I understand, cut the parts of the tree that comes over your property line. But that's my experience, but it's not my advice for you to proceed on that. I'm just sharing you as another private property owner, giving you some advice there. Thank you.
One
Mayor
second.
Stewart?
I'm sorry. The thing is, the tree is so tall, so high. Nobody, no company want to be involved because there is no way to get in, only on her side. And that's the main point here.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Only from her side can be pruned, not from another side, because it's too far away and it's too tall.
I don't have any more information for you. Sorry.
Mayor Stewart?
Thank you. I think I remember our conversation, but I do speak to lots of residents about this particular issue, trees overhanging, roots invading, those kinds of issues. They're a common source of conflict between neighbors, and the city doesn't get involved. Typically, when I speak to someone, I refer, as Councillor O'Neill kind of just did, I refer them to some information. The stuff I refer them to is the Canadian Bar Association's BC division actually has some explanation of those kinds of disputes as they relate to BC law, and I usually send them to this webpage. I won't read out the webpage, but I can give it to you if you like. And it simply says that if your neighbor's tree branches overhang your property, you can cut them, but only up to the property line, and you can't go on your neighbor's property.
I agree.
Or you can't destroy the tree. And the reverse is also true with your trees on their property. If a tree on your property damages your neighbor's property, for example, a tree were to fall, they wouldn't normally be held liable. The owner of the tree wouldn't be held liable unless he or she had been warned ahead of time. So I would urge you perhaps to take the steps to, you and your neighbors, issue some kind of official warning that your tree is in danger of causing harm, and at which point that would shift liability directly onto the owner, according to this document and other documents I've read. But there is no way that we, the city, can force anything here. We can't force the trimming of the branches. We can't force your neighbor to allow a tree removal company onto their property. It should be their idea, and perhaps a letter warning them of the potential liabilities may well be the only way that you can achieve this. It is unfortunate that there are conflicts between adjacent neighbors, and it is a relatively common thing. In some jurisdictions now, that conflict goes so far as to relate to state law related to solar collectors. For example, if you have a solar panel on your roof, your neighbor's tree can't cast shade. We don't have anything like that in BC, although I'm not saying it's not coming. Right now, it's a dispute between two neighbors, or 3 or 4 neighbors, and those can only be handled privately between the neighbors or through a judicial system like the courts. The city can't take sides. We can't get involved. I gather we have, I would suggest you take this website and make it clear, and that seems to make it clear that you can cut those branches that overhang your property, but you have to do it from your property. And I recognize that
the problem is too high,
I get that.
and there is no way to. And also, she doesn't let nobody to put even a letter holding to her property. And also, she doesn't let us to clean the whole garbage the tree drop on my property. She always yelling why I'm cleaning the duty of the tree.
Well, I understand.
And that's what I'm here, because it's so much. And I really appreciate the letter you are telling us to warm up her, to warm. That's
to express the liability issues as you perceive them. That's the best way to do it, I suspect.
Yeah, excuse me, but what you read right now, this is the first time somebody read it, because we've been looking for something like that. I would like to have a copy of those papers that you just read, please.
don't have your email address, but, well, there it is. You will have a copy in about 30 seconds.
Okay.
Very good. Okay, and if anyone else is looking for it, you can go to cbabc.org for the public, and it's their dial-a-law service. So.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you very much. So are we gonna hear from you?
You will get that email from me in a moment, but we can't. There's not much else we can do. You do have to deal with your neighbor, and the city can't order a tree cut down. So.
Well, it wasn't an order that we're looking more. It's something, a word, like a bylaw, a city bylaw, that everybody have to live with that, you know. Like, we like working people or living homeowners, we all pay and live with bylaws. So that's what I needed, that's what we needed. And we were around and around, then nobody gave us any information. They were saying, oh, you have, and not, nobody goes by word. You know, everybody who needs to protect themselves, it needs a letter or a form that says you have the right to do this and that. Don't you think so?
One more thing. The point here is 3 years ago, the tree was almost 25 feet inside my property. 3 years later, has grown up more than another 10 feet. That's covered the whole two place you can see over there. It's already 3 years ago, now covered completely. 3 times in less than 15 years is so much to be spending so much money and changing roof that place where I keep my tools and to clean the whole backyard and things like that. And that's what we are here to get some help. And by law, has to be something for you to do it. Because we cannot do it.
It has to be, you know, someday
We
you have
cannot
to come
do
up
it.
that.
It's getting worse and worse and worse.
We don't have any authority as a city. If the province allowed us or granted us the authority, then we would have some control. I'm not sure we would
No,
exercise
you're not
it.
ordering.
I'm
I'm not asking an order, just giving her a bylaw, you know, he have the right to trim it, and so he have to agree with that. She have to agree with that. That
You have the right to trim it. We don't have any authority to grant you a right because you already have the right to trim it. There's a park right behind my house, and the trees in the park, I'm looking at the director of parks, because those leaves, they're your leaves, and they keep ending up in my gutter, and every year I have to clean them. I can trim at the property line if I choose, but the city has no duty to remove the trees to stop my gutters from getting plugged. So that's our challenge, is that I don't have any power, we don't have any power as the city to be able to control or even encourage the neighbor to remove a tree. In fact, we have the opposite power. We can protect trees, but we can't order them to be removed or even encourage them to be removed.
No, but the point here, I'm sorry,
Okay.
is to fix the situation being for 15 years, and we don't know how long, because the house is a handicap house. I have a daughter which is in the wheelchair. She always is insulting her, even though we are far away. My backyard is 160 feet long. The house on the other side in Thomas, she's way behind 150, and is still insulting us. And we would like to finish just a tree, and probably everything is gonna be done. But the lady from the place of here told us that there is by law a regulation. When she started to look, she couldn't find the computer.
There is no.
And has to be something. And we have to do something before the situation getting worse.
About our good neighbor policy.
Thank you very much. We hope to hear from you guys. Please, I'm sorry. And like I said, never been in a meeting like that, but I'm really glad. And I hope to continue seeing you soon. Thank you very much. Excuse me.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. This is so unfair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Moving on to other business. The first other business item concerns fire department charges and insurance cost recovery and was raised by Councillor Marston.
Thank you very much. Chief Pierlot, thank you for your report. For council, the chief wrote this report on the 28th of June, a short review. This comes about from the FCM convention in Winnipeg a few weeks back. There was a company that did have a presentation that spoke to cost recoveries that they were pursuing for various jurisdictions across the country. And specifically it was fire related, where they looked and said they found municipalities that brought in bylaws in which there was an ability for the fire department or for the city to pursue costs from the insurance companies associated with fire response. Again, specifically looking to pursue the insurance companies themselves, because many household policies do have a clause in them that would enable cost recoveries. So the chief wrote this report, and you speak to the fact that there was a fairly significant fire over on Glen Drive, that the cost recoverables on it were only about $5,000 under this. You looked at some of the other municipalities around us and what they do, and it doesn't seem like anybody is really looking to bring in cost recovery from the insurance companies specifically, beyond hazmat, fire investigation, or legal activity, and you're very good to point out that we have that. But what it doesn't speak to is some of the consumables, and so I'm wondering, in your research, did you identify any of the consumables that could be recovered, and what if that might impact the decision? For example, I do understand that a lot of our fires are put out with a combination of water and foam. The foam obviously has a specific cost. Is there recoverable to it? Because the trade show booth indicated they felt the average house fire had recoverables of $800 to $1,000, which is very much contrary to what your findings were. So I'm just looking for a greater clarity around that, if you might.
A point of order, Madam Chair. Councillor Marsden is referring to a report that the public hasn't seen, and this is a public meeting. And I'm just wanting to know if this report is now going to be made public, or if it was intended to be public or put on the public record in some way. So about the full report, the public might be quite confused about what exactly is going on here. Madam Chair.
Okay.
Maybe ask the clerk or somebody. I don't know.
Sure. Do you have something to say, Mayor Stewart?
Well, I'll only say that the issue can be raised. Reference can be made to information that Councillor Marsden has. It is awkward if they're referring to a document that probably wasn't written for public consumption, because I remember the document has liability issues and a number of other elements in it that wouldn't have made it necessarily, as I recall, a document that was for public consumption. So if the question can be more accurately phrased in the context of information and the materials that you got from FCM, which I remember were quite useful and raised the question quite well on their own, perhaps.
Okay. Well, then I will ask if... sorry?
So the answer... so you answered a question that I asked the chair, and I wasn't sure if I was... You think it's not for public consumption?
I don't know if it's for public consumption. We could have that, but we can't have that discussion here. But if Councillor Marsden wants to raise a question related to information that he's aware of, and doesn't make reference to a document or...
Made reference to the...
He did make reference.
So, and I was just thinking from the point of view of the public here.
Yeah, we can't.
What's going on here?
Yeah, unfortunately, he can't unmake reference. So now we have the reference having been made. If he could continue in the context without referring to documents that aren't in public realm, or else have the chief make the document in public now.
Or make the answers.
Either way.
Okay, your hands, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
I'll rephrase my comment then. Perhaps that'll assist. At the FCM, there was a display booth that spoke to cost recoverables. We've had some discussion about it, and through this conversation appears to be some feel that there's recoverables with employee costs that are above and beyond. I'm wondering if any of your research would indicate that what the trade show booth was presenting with regards to recoverables for foam or other elements used in fire suppression, are those recoverable if we were to supply the appropriate bylaws in your research?
Through the chair, yes, there are some recoverable consumables that the fire services could charge for. Councillor Marsden has mentioned one in particular is compressed air foam that we mix in with our water to make a more efficient suppression water, if you will, or system. We buy that in pails. It's not cheap, but every fire is a little different how many of those pails you go through. We happen to not go through as many pails as some fire services might, because we have a full service department and we're able to extinguish our fires fairly quickly when we're in the offensive mode. But some of the other consumables that might be attributed, from my understanding, would be food or nourishment to the fire crews at fires. We do have some costs associated with cleaning of our turnout gear. After they've been through so many fires, they have to be cleaned by trained technicians, and we send that gear away to be cleaned so it continues to meet certification. So there's costs with that as well that could be attributed to each fire. There would be some costs you could certainly attribute to the fuel of your apparatus while it's idling at fires or pumping as well. Again, because a lot of fire services don't go in depth that way, it would be difficult to sort of determine at this time until you had a clear look at it, how you would determine what some of those costs are. Some are straight out front costs. Others would take a certain amount of deliberation on how you would affix a cost there. Of course, Councillor Marsden is also speaking about the largest recoverable costs that many communities, smaller communities, find favorable to recover if they have such enactment bylaws is the cost of their paid on-call fire service, where they are paid by event or by incident they go to, so you can determine exactly what your labor costs are, because those personnel only come out to fires that they are called to attend. Those are more difficult or not able to be recovered in a career department where we have salaried, if you will, employees that are not paid by event. They are on duty 24/7. There are some costs that could be attributed to callback costs, where those personnel were called out specifically to backfill any labor that you had attending the fire, and you wanted to keep your halls backfilled with full-time staff. So those costs could be attributed as well. So there's a wide gamut, but certainly in the smaller communities without career firefighters, such recovery would look attractive because they can basically pay their labor costs. To some degree, the consumables to a lesser amount, but there still are some dollar figures there as well.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I won't press further with the breakdown. Appreciate it. Appreciate the information. Thanks.
Thank you for that information, Chief Perlott. There's a few councillors here with questions. We'll start with Councillor Hodge, Councillor O'Neill, Asmussen, and then Councillor Reid.
Have we looked at other areas of billing? I remember years ago there was some discussion about claiming back against ICBC for calls to motor vehicle accidents and whether that becomes part of the motor vehicle claim or insurance claim. Has this been looked at, or do we do it? Or just wondering, maybe you can elaborate. Maybe there's other areas where the fire department provides a service.
Through the chair again, Councillor Hodge, another good question. One thing that the information that the FCM caused me to do was to research in depth with the insurance agencies and our fellow fire services in the area. There are a couple of fire services that have enactment bylaws to reclaim ICBC or fire service charges from attending motor vehicle incidents. However, the two fire services that I received information back on that have that practice report they are unsuccessful in claiming any fees from ICBC on that. So it has been tried to without success against the Insurance Bureau of ICBC, sorry, Insurance Corporation of BC.
I believe there's one up in the valley that was responding to a lot of calls in the canyon. It was again an on-call type thing, and so that they were experiencing costs for attending motor vehicle accidents, which they normally here in Coquitlam we pay our firefighters to be on call 24/7. But as you said, in some areas where they have to be called in, and there's an actual cost to bringing them into an event. But you're saying even in those cases they haven't been able to been successful in claiming back.
Yeah, now, just to be clear through the chair, I checked with fire services. I believe I know the agency you're speaking to. I don't believe they're a society, I believe, okay. And so I'm not sure what their success has been. But with fire service, yeah. I know this has been talked about search and rescue billing for claims and, EHS billing back to the ambulance service in essence. So I think this is sort of something that's been looked at in the past. I'm not in favor of it because I think that in the case of our taxpayers, they're already paying for a service. And while we're always looking for recovery, at the end of the day, it would be recovered through an insurance company. And as we know, insurance costs get spread back to the people who pay the premiums. So we'd probably end up paying for it one way or another, but I think it's an interesting sort of idea to sort of see if there's a way to recover. But from what it sounds like, that's not going to happen. So I appreciate Councillor Marston raising it, and thank you for the information that you provided.
Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you. My question follows from Councillor Hodge. Actually, it's coincidentally, it was about the impact on insurance and things like that. Now, did your research indicate whether or not, if a fire department does put a cost recovery policy in place, whether it would be able to discriminate between those that have insurance and those that don't have insurance? I'm looking at a situation where 95% of people have fire insurance, and a department might regularly bill for some of the things you mentioned. You didn't ask for, you mentioned. But once that policy is in place, if they come to some poor person who doesn't have an insurance policy, and it happens in apartments and things like that, oh, well, we've got to be fair, we got to hit them too, and then holy mackerel, that wouldn't be too nice. So did you find whether or not there's a discrimination allowed between insured and non-insured?
Through the chair. Councillor O'Neill, I did ask some of those questions. One of my main point of contact in researching some of the insurance out there was with the Insurance Bureau of Canada, and they're the overall regulatory body. They indicate that the question you raise on whether that would affect insurances or the availability or rates would vary with each insurance company. So that's an interesting question. I didn't get a clear answer, but it sounded like there was a lot of varying ways that such could be applied to and whether it would be a general area to each resident. They weren't able to comment wholly on it, other than they felt there could be some areas where that practice might be the case. But again, it would be up to each insurance company, and as we know, it's a private contract that each person can avail themselves of. So if you didn't like what one insurance company wanted, you could maybe go to another one. But I believe they also.
But you said you didn't even want insurance because some apartment owners don't have content insurance, and if they ended up being billed because it's policy. That's a can of worms that I'd rather leave sealed quite tightly. So interesting, and I'm like Councillor Hodge. I'm not interested in going after this. It's a bigger can of worms, can of snakes. Thanks.
Councillor Asmussen.
Thank you. Just to touch on what Councillor Hodges, I've been on here for 11 years in council, going 12 years, and you may remember this has come up a number of times on wanting to charge for ICBC wanted to charge for medical calls. We tried a couple letters, different times about the province, giving us funding back for medical calls. No success in that. The province will not go down that route. I find the fact that it seems a little mean-spirited to be going to somebody's insurance company after fire and people would feel they paid taxes for a number of years. That's part of the service. I don't think the cost recovery so far we've shown in here, Chief, are huge dollars that we'd be taking back. We're not taking tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars in recovery. This is just within here. Yeah.
I'm not referring to.
Anyways, the part of the issue is that we had a fire just recently at an insurance company here where we charged for closing the road, and it was felt to be mean-spirited in that, and we council backed off on that. So I think that reaction would come to council from people, again, by charging to their insurance. So I don't have any real interest in going down this road. We've been down this road a number of times before, and I don't think it's the way to go for the dollars that could be involved.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. Well, as having gone to a gazillion of these trade shows and always coming up with the best and the brightest ideas, through the last 25 years, I've probably brought more stuff back to staff than they know what to do with. And at a point in time, we got a previous council, Brent was on it, of course, and Richard, I believe. We got to the point that if you want to take something to a staff to get a report on it, you first bring it to council and say, hey, is anybody interested in pursuing this? Because if you don't, we end up wasting staff time doing so much stuff. And if we all come back with something from one convention, and believe me, I've done this, Dennis, over and over. I've got the world's best play set, and I've got the world's best accounting program and all this stuff, only to be told that, yeah, we want to look at it, or no, we don't. This is a real rocky road to go down, and over the years we sort of have gone down it. But once we get to buildings, where it gets confusing, it's the property owner, the taxpayer, that pays the taxes. And the tenants are usually told that they have to have a tenant's package, and then they have to have a condo package if they're in a high-rise. Then the strata buildings and properties, and that's another package. And then the residential buildings are another package, single-family homes, commercial and industrial. The hardest hit here is going to be commercial and industrial because of the value of their properties. And the way they're going to evaluate them, the insurance companies always take the assessed values of the improvements and they add on to that. In a small community, and when you have a fire service that isn't fully staffed and that, it makes total sense. Ours, I think people pay taxes, and taxes are what they get this service for. And I think this would be a Donnybrook, even trying to implement it with all these different types of buildings we have. And I just believe that this is not the way to go, and I'm not interested in pursuing this. And every year I go to one of these conferences, there's always some new little group who try to find a little niche somewhere that they can open up some business doing something. And it's really hard to discern them all. And I'm glad you brought it forward because it gives us another chance to discuss it. It's just not something, we're too urban now. I'm not interested in going down this road at all.
Councillor Zerillo?
Well, mine is a procedural question, either for Mr. Dumas or Mr. Steblin, about, and Councillor Reid kind of alluded to it, is what is the procedure? I mean, I realize this is not a report, it's just a memo, but I'm wondering what is the procedure for a councillor to come back from either a trade show or an event and want to use staff resources without council's input? What is the procedure?
Thank you very much. Through the chair, oftentimes when council goes away to FCM or to UBCM, they do come back with ideas for staff, and questions will be put to staff. You know, what do you think of this or that? In this particular one, it was probably on the high end in terms of the amount of work to do a memo back to council to give staff's perspective. But when we do get information back to staff, we do try to, if it's a reasonable amount of time and work, to do work to respond to the council member that's bringing the information back and answer their questions.
because I'm sensing some inequity here. I mean, I brought something a couple of months ago just asking for tree cutting permits, number of tree cutting permits, and that turned into a 20-minute discussion around this table. That we needed council input, and now we're using Chief Pirlot is pretty high senior person in our city that's had to do this research. So I really would like a better understanding of what I'm allowed to bring and what I'm not allowed to bring to city staff. So could I get an exact timeline, or how maybe explain how this report happened? Because I have some things too that came back from FCM that I could certainly unload on staff desk.
Well, the general rule of thumb is if it's going to be a significant amount of work and staff time, then it should come back through the council table to get the go-ahead to whether to do the work or not. In this particular case, I believe the request came back from Councillor Marsden to Chief Pirlot asking him a question about, this particular issue. So Chief Pirlot put together a response we thought would be of interest to all of council, so we did a memo for all of council. I think when he delved into the issue, it was probably a little bit more complicated than what he envisioned when he started his response, but that's how this issue came about, and that's generally how we handle requests from council members to staff.
Well, I appreciate the memo from Chief Pirlot, and I'm not against the memo. I think it's wonderful, but I just want to make it known on the record that I'm seeing some inequities in regards to information coming back based on which councillor asks the question. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Marsden?
Thank you. I think Mr. Dumont clarified it fairly well. It came about when I returned from the trade show. I fired off a quick email to the chief just to say, have you heard of this? Are you aware of any legislation in BC that would prevent us from looking at it? That was the question. And the chief indicated to me that it was consistent with some other work he was doing, and he would gather some information. So with due respect to process, I think a simple question that yielded a lot more information perhaps than we did initially thought. I appreciate it. I thought there was value in it. The example that's cited by the organization at the trade show that made this worthwhile looking at is, again, looking at $1,000, potentially $1,000 per fire. And by comparison, looking at Fort Mac. If Fort McMurray had this type of bylaw in place, there was $71 million of recoverable costs that municipality could pursue. Given the fact that we've got the interface with so much forest in the Northeast, I felt it was worth the question. And I appreciate all the work that the chief has done on this and the information and the great work your team is doing. I want to thank you for looking into it a little bit further. Thanks a lot.
Councillor Wilson?
I was just going to try to ask for clarification on what Councillor Zerillo had asked, because I don't know if we actually got a clear answer. But then when Councillor Marsden mentioned how this came about, it made it more clear to me. So, because at a different, I was at the LGLA conference once, and one of the theories is councillors should really only be talking to the city manager. We've had that discussion before. City manager said, no, you don't mind if we go and talk to the general managers, which is great. And if Councillor Marsden had been looking for more than what he asked, would the appropriate process have been to come to council, have a quick little discussion?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, that's all I wanted to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But it was a simple question, sounded like, and we really appreciate all the work you did. We're not, I'm just trying to get it in my...
We probably was being more helpful than...
Yeah.
Very helpful to the report. So thanks, right? Thanks.
Thank you.
Don't let that happen again.
Just a quick follow-up. That is a perfect example of what happens at cities that doesn't do anybody any good. Because if we were in Fort McMurray now, and all our residents could claim $71 million. That would be the last claim they'd ever make in their life, because no one would ever insure that place again, or them, or any kind of insurance they would get would be sky high. So this is where you have to always temper what you're doing with what the ripple effect's going to be, and it would be horrendous with insurance companies, trust me. Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else? Mayor Stewart?
There was one other example from our past. It's actually been happened a couple of times where the long-standing removal of the fire victims from a multifamily building resulted in perhaps 18 months later they were applying to council to waive the water, the utility in their building, even though their insurance company was completely covering their new rent, which would mean that if we waived the water, they would get a windfall. Not granted, they're fire victims. They would get they wouldn't pay any water during that particular time when they weren't in their unit. And in fact, at one point we did it, but an insurance company mentioned to me that when they find those things, they usually claw them back, because any reimbursements of a tenant or a homeowner that lower the cost to the insurance company doesn't actually cover those costs. So I think we have to be, this is a finely balanced relationship between insurer, fire department, and city. And I appreciate the information that came back that we got at FCM and we've received at other conferences, and I appreciated any information that we might have seen since then.
And I echo that. I appreciate the information, and I appreciate the discussion and the reminder about, about process and council and staff interaction. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
OB2 pertains to park encroachment along the Coquitlam Crunch and was raised by Councillor Cirillo.
Thanks. In the past, and then again currently, I've been contacted by residents that have learned that they were encroaching on the city park portion of the Coquitlam Crunch, and they've been asked to fix those encroachments. And they're happy to comply, but one of the questions that came up is, are they allowed to maintain the upkeep of that portion of the city property, mow the lawn or keep the weeds out? Are they allowed to do work on that portion that they've traditionally been maintaining?
Mr. Alueva?
Through the chair. Well, I guess first of all, yes, we are currently pursuing a number of encroachments along the Coquitlam Crunch and along as well with a number of other parks throughout the system. As you know, it's really important to continue to do that. Otherwise, these things just run out of control. And so there's good reasons for that, and we do have a little bit of resources to do that. There are many, many cases, and the way we deal with each one is quite unique. In some cases, it's strictly a kind of an occupation. There's a fence that has to be moved. In other cases, there's much more structures. It all really depends on the situation. I don't know if Kathleen, you're aware of this particular situation, but I'll just give those overview comments. We do try to work with property owners as best as we can, but maybe Kathleen can give a little bit of summary on this one.
We're trying to be sensitive to the purpose of the encroachment. So in some cases, people have enhanced the public realm in a way that multiple people benefit from. But when it's a purely private benefit, and in some cases where we have people took down their fence and started transforming the parkland, so it went from being probably hardhack and blackberry to grass, we're actually asking them to stop maintaining the grass in those circumstances, and we can work with them to replant it with something that would grow there. But there are exceptions where, because of the way the trail and the crunch, where the public enjoys that space, where the improvements are actually primarily, ironically, to the public, not to the adjacent property owner, we're signing them up as volunteers. So we're trying to regularize that and recognize that there's a difference. So when we're not asking them to rip it out because that would be unreasonable, and there is actually a public benefit on those instances. So we're trying to draw the line around that question. Who's really benefiting from this? Does that make sense?
So yes, thank you. So if, for an example, someone had always just been mowing the lawn, we want that to come back to be...
In some cases, we work with them to replant it into something else, and in some cases, we just say, just stop mowing the lawn, as a way of signaling that they shouldn't be the beneficiary of a large grassy yard that doesn't belong to them.
Okay, and they all have a contact person to reach
Yes.
out to when they've been approached?
Yes.
Thank you. That's good information because we get asked. Thanks.
Madam Chair, that's the last formal item on the agenda.
Move adjournment.
Second.
By Councilor O'Neill, second by Councilor Rasmussen. Let's adjourn. Should we vote 10-minute recess?